the iron arm of Dry Wells. The town of Dry Wells never truly slept, it just held its breath. Out on the plains, the old pump jacks rose and fell like dying beasts, their metal bones creaking under the weight of decades. The air smelled of rust, diesel, and that faint sweetness oil leaves on skin after a lifetime of handling it. Rusty Harlan wiped a glass behind the counter of his bar, the Roadhouse. The neon sign outside stuttered between open and PEN, and he sometimes wondered which version was truer. The jukebox hadn't worked in months, the beer kegs were half warm, and the last customer had left 3 hours ago, an old rancher too drunk to remember which direction home was. Rusty should have closed up. Instead, he sat in the dark, his bad leg stretched across the bar stool next to him, listening to the buzz of a dying fluorescent bulb. Inside his chest, there was a rhythm only he could hear, metal against bone. The skin graft around his right arm itched again, as if the thing under it wanted out. He poured himself a shot, not because he needed it but because rituals keep ghosts busy. Division 7 had drilled that into him once, patterns keep you sane. So he polished, he poured, he stared. Outside, the wind rose, dragging a curtain of dust across Main Street. Somewhere far off, a raven croaked, thick and heavy, like its throat was full of tar. Then he heard it, the crunch of tires, fast, desperate, not from any local. Headlights tore through the night, growing brighter until the front of a black pickup exploded into the parking lot. It skidded sideways, clipping the old gas pump and knocking the open sign dead. Rusty stood before he knew he had. His right leg locked like cold steel. The truck door swung open. A figure stumbled out, young, bleeding from the forehead, clutching something glowing in his hand. "Jesus," Rusty muttered, stepping around the bar. "You trying to kill yourself, son?" The kid slammed into the doorframe, half falling into the room. The glow in his hand was a phone, still streaming, camera shaking. His voice trembled. "Help me," he gasped. "Please, she's still down there." Rusty caught him by the shoulder. The kid's jacket was slick with blood and some dark sludge that wasn't blood at all. It smelled like burnt metal and rain on asphalt. "Sit down," Rusty ordered. "Tell me who the hell you are." "Cassidy. Cassidy Vega." The name didn't mean anything yet, but the tone did, panic mixed with something that looked a lot like guilt. Cassidy's hand shook as he turned the phone toward Rusty. On screen was a grainy video, lit by the weak beam of a headlamp. A girl screamed. The camera swung wild, catching the inside of an oil shaft, corrugated walls, dripping with something thick and black. In the center of the frame, a figure clawed backward, her nails leaving streaks in the mud. Behind her, something huge and shifting slid out of the shadows. Not footsteps. Not human. The last clear sound before the feed cut was the girl's voice, "Rusty. Help me." The phone dropped to the floor. The live stream timer froze at 2:13 a.m. Rusty didn't breathe. He just stared at the screen, at the oil stain left where the girl's hand had been. It shimmered, faintly alive. Cassidy's words came in bursts. "That's my sister. I tried to, she was doing one of my streams, you know, ghost hunter content. And my followers said the old mine was haunted. I thought." Rusty raised his hand. "Mine number 13. The kid blinked. "Yeah. How did you?" Rusty's stomach turned. He walked to the shelf behind the bar, moved a dusty bottle aside, and pressed the wall panel behind it. A soft click echoed. Beneath the counter, something hummed. Cassidy looked around, confused. What are you doing? Rusty didn't answer. He reached under the bar, pulled out a key the size of a knife, and turned it in the hidden lock. A trapdoor opened behind the bar stools, exhaling the smell of metal oil and old gunpowder. Down below, dim light glinted off glass cases and stacked crates. Cassidy took a step closer. What the hell is this? Rusty exhaled slowly. Insurance. From somewhere outside came another sound, a low, wet fluttering. The windows trembled. Rusty limped to the door, shotgun in hand. He pushed it open just enough to look out. The parking lot was crawling with black shapes. They looked like crows at first, until the light from the doorway hit them and their feathers glistened like tar. Each one's eyes burned white, like tiny headlights. Cassidy whispered, "What are those?" "Don't say it," Rusty snapped. He raised the shotgun, fired once. The blast lit up the night. One of the creatures burst into oily smoke that rained down like ash. More gathered on the rooftops, wings creaking like cracking asphalt. Rusty shut the door and dropped the bolt. "They followed you," he growled. "I didn't. What are they?" "Scouts," Rusty said. "She knows you're here." Cassidy backed against the counter. Ooh. Rusty turned toward him, the neon light catching the seam where flesh met steel on his forearm. He unbuttoned the cuff, peeled back the fabric. What lay underneath wasn't prosthetic, it pulsed faintly, veins of metal alive with dull red light. Cassidy's eyes widened. What happened to your arm?" Rusty flexed the fingers. Metal claws whispered against each other. "Long story. Short version, I lost a bet with something that shouldn't exist." The kid stared. "You're Division 7, right? I've read about you. My followers think you guys were just a myth." "Yeah," Rusty said. "We were. Until we weren't." He sat down, the shotgun across his knees. "Now start from the top. When did your sister go missing?" Cassidy swallowed. "Last night. I was streaming live, testing a new drone setup inside the mine. She went deeper. Said she saw something moving in the walls, like oil veins, pulsing. Then, the signal went crazy. I thought it was interference. I went after her and found..." He broke off, hands shaking. "Found bones, man. Stripped clean but still dripping. And then the crows came. I ran. Drove here." Rusty leaned forward. "Why here?" Cassidy hesitated. "Because she called your name." Silence filled the room. The wind howled against the shutters. Rusty stared into the dark window. His reflection looked older than 64, older than the town itself. He could still see the pit, the way it boiled with black light that night in 2009, the night he'd sealed the shaft and left 12 men inside. He stood, ignoring the pain in his leg. "You shouldn't have come here, kid." Cassidy flinched. "You're just gonna let her die?" Rusty didn't answer. He reached for the bottle, poured another shot, and downed it. "You don't understand what's in that mine." Cassidy stepped forward, slamming his palms on the bar. "Then make me understand." Rusty looked up, eyes flat as spent shell casings. "You ever see a man's shadow move before his body does?" Cassidy blinked. "No." "Then pray you don't." Another thud outside. The windows pulsed once, like a heartbeat. The floorboards creaked under something heavy moving across the porch. Rusty cocked the shotgun again, the sound loud as thunder in the silence. Kid, he said, voice low, if you've got any prayers left, start saying them. Because she's found us. Outside, the neon sign flickered one last time. Open. Pen. Then nothing. Rusty turned off the light and the world went black. The sound came again, a dragging scrape across the porch, followed by the soft thud of something heavy landing on the roof. Rusty motioned to Cassidy to stay quiet. The kid's breathing was too loud, too fast. He'd never been hunted before. Not by something that didn't care what species you were. Rusty eased toward the window. The glass was smeared black, like someone had dipped their hand in oil and pressed it there. Through the smear, faint shapes moved, shadows with wings that didn't flap so much as shift, like smoke caught in reverse wind. He remembered that sound. Oil crows. Division 7 had logged them once, back when the world still pretended to classify monsters. Synthetic carrion, born where crude oil met dead skin. Their purpose was simple, find the living, mark the site. He turned to Cassidy. They don't hunt, they signal. Which means whatever's behind them is coming. Cassidy swallowed hard. Mother Marrow? Rusty said nothing. His silence was answer enough. The kid looked ready to bolt, but Rusty's hand shot out, cold steel fingers gripping his shoulder. You run, they follow. You breathe too loud, they listen. You post another goddamn video, I'll break your phone in your face. Cassidy nodded, wide-eyed. Rusty released him and limped toward the trapdoor behind the bar. Come on. We're not dying upstairs. They descended into the armory. The air down there was colder, denser. Rows of weapons lined the concrete walls, each tagged with faded government seals. Beneath a workbench sat old canisters marked, Division 7, Experimental. A map of the desert was pinned to the far wall, peppered with black X's. Mine number 13 had the thickest circle around it, drawn in rust. Cassidy stood frozen halfway down the stairs. Jesus. This is a war room. Rusty flicked a switch. Fluorescent tubes buzzed awake, painting the space in sickly white. Not anymore, he said. Now it's just storage. He limped over to a locker, punched a code into a keypad, and opened it. Inside lay a shotgun with its barrel sawed short and its shells engraved with silver runes. He tossed it onto the table. Slug rounds. Packed with salt, ash, and skinwalker marrow. Don't miss. Cassidy didn't move. Rusty glanced back. You ever fired a gun, Vega? Yeah, Cassidy lied. Rusty tossed him the shotgun anyway. The kid barely caught it. Congratulations. You just joined Division 7. For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of the lights. Then something upstairs crashed, a window shattered, followed by the screech of talons on wood. Rusty's mechanical arm flexed automatically. It still remembered what to do. He grabbed a canister of gasoline, uncapped it, and poured a line along the bottom of the stairs. If they come down, light it. Cassidy fumbled for a lighter. You really think fire stops them? Fire doesn't stop them, Rusty said. It makes them scream. He opened a metal trunk and pulled out a glass vial filled with something red-black that pulsed faintly, like it had a heartbeat. He held it up to the light. Cassidy grimaced. What the hell is that? Blood of a skinwalker, Rusty said. Half mine, half its. Mixed it myself. Only thing Mother Marrow fears more than sunlight. Cassidy blinked. You bled that thing. Rusty looked at his metal arm. No. I became it. A shiver passed through the room as the noise upstairs grew louder. Boots, claws, something slithering between the sounds. Rusty stepped to the wall, opened a steel case, and retrieved a radio handset. He turned the dial. Static hissed. Then a familiar voice, smoky and low, broke through. Rusty's Roadhouse, this is Songbird. You still breathing, old man? Rusty's lips twitched. Barely. Saw the sky turn black. I take it that's not weather. Oil crows. They found me. You want me to sing Emma lullaby? Yeah. Make it loud. Copy that. The line went dead. Cassidy looked confused. Songbird. The woman upstairs. The singer. Rusty nodded. Her voice ain't just for drunks. She's got pipes tuned in hell. They heard it seconds later, her voice rising from somewhere across town, echoing through the empty streets. The melody was haunting, wordless, a sound that didn't belong to any language men were meant to hear. The air in the bar shifted. The scratching stopped. For a moment, everything held still. Then came the noise of wings tearing through the night, retreating, scattered. Cassidy stared at the ceiling. She's driving them off. For now. Rusty reloaded his pistol. But she can't keep that note forever. The longer she sings, the closer the real one gets. Cassidy blinked. The real one. Rusty looked at him, ice cold. Mother Marrow don't send scouts unless she's hungry. Upstairs, a faint drip echoed, slow, deliberate. Rusty raised his head. Oil was seeping through the ceiling, thick as blood. Cassidy whispered, "Is it?" "Yeah." Rusty grabbed a flare gun from the table. Time to move. They climbed the stairs cautiously. The bar above looked different now, like the building itself was sweating. Oil dripped from the rafters, crawling down the walls in veins that pulsed toward the floor. The jukebox flickered to life on its own, speakers coughing static that morphed into faint whispers. Rusty moved fast. Grabbed the ammo crate. "Don't touch the oil." Cassidy hesitated. "Why?" "Because it's alive," Rusty snapped. As they crossed the floor, something shifted under the boards, a sound like bubbling tar. A black tendril burst through the planks, snaking toward Cassidy's boot. Rusty swung his shotgun, fired point blank. The tendril exploded, splattering black droplets that hissed where they landed. Cassidy stumbled back, trembling. "It's Jesus, it's moving." Rusty grabbed his arm, dragging him toward the exit. "You wanted to hunt monsters, kid? Congratulations, you found the mother." They burst out into the night. The sky over Dry Wells was thick with smoke and moving shadows. Dozens of oil crows circled the radio tower at the edge of town, drawn to the sound of Songbird's voice. Her song cracked mid-note, turning into a raw scream before cutting out entirely. Rusty froze. They got her. Cassidy's breath hitched. "Then we go help her." Rusty shook his head. "No time. You said your sister's in the mine. That's where it ends." Cassidy's voice cracked. "You don't get it, man. She's all I've got." Rusty turned on him. "And this town's all I've got. So don't you lecture me about loss." For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Rusty looked toward the horizon, toward the black silhouette of the abandoned derricks, standing like broken ribs against the sky. A dull light pulsed from beneath the earth, far off, like a heartbeat buried under sand. "Mother's awake," Rusty murmured. "She remembers me." Cassidy stared at him. "Then what are we waiting for?" Rusty sighed. "A reason to live through it." He walked toward the truck, reloading as he went. The neon sign above the bar flickered weakly back to life for one last second, just enough to show the word "open" again. Then it blew out with a pop. The night swallowed them whole. As the truck engine roared to life, the ground beneath the town gave a subtle tremor, barely enough to notice, unless you'd been here before. Rusty had. And he knew what it meant. The mine wasn't waiting for them. It was waking up to greet them. By dawn, Dry Wells looked less like a town and more like a wound that never closed. The wind dragged dust across the empty streets, scattering bottle caps and old prayer cards. The oil rigs out past the highway leaned at odd angles, frozen mid-grown, their shadows stretching across the desert like gravestones that had forgotten who they belonged to. Rusty's pickup rattled down Main Street, its bed stacked with crates of ammunition, wire spools, and fuel canisters. Cassidy rode shotgun, eyes hollow, one hand gripping the shotgun like a lifeline. The kid hadn't slept. Neither had Rusty. "Town this small," Rusty muttered, "word travels faster than plague." He wasn't wrong. By the time they pulled up to the courthouse steps, 3 men were already waiting, armed, tired, and scared. One of them wore a deputy badge dulled with age. Sheriff Boone. The man looked carved out of oak and regret. His beard was silver, his left sleeve empty and pinned at the shoulder. He eyed Rusty's mechanical arm with the kind of recognition that only comes from shared nightmares. "Never thought I'd see you again," Boone said. "Didn't think I'd have reason," Rusty replied. "But the well's calling." Boone spat into the dirt. "Thought we buried that thing for good." "Yeah," Rusty said. "So did we." Cassidy stood awkwardly between them, dust in his hair. "Ah, excuse me. My sister." Boone looked him up and down. "Who's the kid?" "Trouble," Rusty said. "The kind that comes with cameras." "I'm right here," Cassidy snapped. Rusty ignored him and handed Boone a metal case. Inside were silver-etched bullets and vials of holy water turned gray from age. "You still got your men?" "Few," Boone said. "Old, half-blind, mean as hell." "That'll have to do." Rusty nodded. "That'll do just fine." They walked together down to Rusty's roadhouse. Or what was left of it. The roof had caved in on one side, oil feathers scattered across the floor. Songbird sat on the counter, blood on her lips but still breathing. Her voice was hoarse, her throat glowed faintly where the dried banshee cords hung like jewelry. When she saw Rusty, she smiled the way dying stars smile before they fall. "Your arm's still ticking, old man." "Barely. I sang till my head bled," she said. "Think I bought you an hour." Rusty nodded. "Then let's use it." They turned the roadhouse into a fortress. Cassidy rigged drones from his truck, each armed with mounted spotlights scavenged from abandoned rigs. He set them to hover in a defensive grid above Main Street. Boone's men stretched barbed wire between lampposts and soaked the lines in a mix of holy water and salt. The smell burned the air. Rusty took command like it was muscle memory. Every step, every order, carried the echo of a soldier who never stopped fighting wars no one would admit existed. "Light perimeter first," he barked. "They hate fluorescence. Use car batteries if you have to. And for God's sake, don't shoot till you see movement in the oil." Cassidy hesitated. Why the oil? Rusty didn't look up. Because it moves before she does. Inside the bar, Songbird tuned the old PA system. Her voice, even shredded, still carried a strange frequency that could make glass hum. Rusty handed her a small mic wrapped in silver thread. "You sure about this?" she asked. He met her eyes. "Your voice scares them." "That's good enough." By late afternoon, the town felt like a heartbeat waiting for its next skip. Cassidy walked along the main barricade, camera hanging useless at his neck. He wasn't streaming anymore. Fame didn't mean much when monsters learned your face. He stopped by Rusty, who was checking the tension on a wire line. "You've done this before," Cassidy said quietly. "Too many times." "And you lost people?" Rusty's jaw tightened. "I lose everyone." Cassidy didn't press. The silence between them was heavy, but honest. A low whistle cut through the wind. Boone stood at the edge of town, binoculars raised. "We got movement on the ridge." Rusty limped over, took the binoculars. The sun was sinking, staining the desert red. Against that glow, black figures crawled over the horizon, not walking, not flying, but gliding like liquid shadows. Oil crows. Hundreds of them. And behind them, something taller. Something that bent the light around it. "Mother Marrow," Rusty whispered. Cassidy swallowed. "How do we kill something made of oil?" Rusty racked his shotgun. "Same way you kill anything that bleeds, make it remember the pain." Night fell. The first wave hit just after 8. The crows dove in swarms, smashing against the light grid. Sparks rained down like shooting stars. The air smelled of burnt tar and feathers. Boone's men opened fire. Salt shells shredded the creatures, each burst dissolving one into black smoke. But for every crow they dropped, 2 more took its place. Songbird's voice rose through the speakers, raw and beautiful, vibrating the air with a frequency that made the creatures recoil mid-flight. The bar lights flickered in rhythm to her song, casting strobing shadows across the street. Cassidy piloted his drones above the rooftops, their spotlights cutting white holes in the darkness. He shouted over the noise, "We're holding them." Rusty didn't answer. He could feel it, the pressure under his feet. The ground itself was trembling, softening. Then the oil came. It bubbled up through the cracks in the asphalt, thick and alive, spreading like veins. From within it rose shapes, half-formed limbs, child-sized, faces blurred as if carved from smoke. Their eyes burned white. Rusty fired into the pool, the rounds igniting small bursts of flame, but it was like shooting into water. Boone cursed. "They're coming from below." "Fall back." Rusty yelled. "Get to the square." Cassidy grabbed Songbird by the arm as the bar roof caved in completely. She coughed blood, clutching her throat. The song broke off mid-note, and the silence that followed was worse than the noise. The crows screamed in unison, thousands of mechanical voices twisting into one. The oil surged forward, swallowing the first barricade hole. Rusty fired his last slug, grabbed a flare, and hurled it behind him. The gasoline line ignited in a roar of orange flame that lit the entire town like a sunrise from hell. The wave recoiled, shrieking, but not retreating. Cassidy dragged Songbird behind a truck. "She's burning up," he shouted. Rusty knelt beside her. The cords around her neck were glowing white-hot. He tried to tear them free, but they fused to her skin. She grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. "Finish it," she rasped. The well, Burn the well. Her fingers slipped away. Her body stilled. The cords dimmed. Cassidy turned his face away, jaw trembling. Rusty stood slowly, eyes reflecting the firelight. "She bought us time," he said. Boone staggered over, bleeding from a cut on his forehead. "Then let's not waste it. The square's the last line." Rusty nodded. "Set the traps. We hold till dawn, or we die trying." By midnight, half the town was gone. The courthouse clock was stuck at 12:03, frozen by the heat. Every street lamp flickered, running off dying batteries. Rusty stood in the center of the square, mechanical arm dripping oil and blood. The few remaining townsfolk circled behind overturned trucks, rifles ready. Cassidy crouched beside him, face streaked with soot. "She's in the mine, isn't she?" Rusty looked toward the black hills, where the earth pulsed with faint red light. "Yeah. And she's not alone." Boone reloaded his rifle, shaking his head. "Then we finish this. No more running." Rusty tightened the strap on his prosthetic arm. "You sure you still believe in God, Boone?" The sheriff grinned weakly. "After tonight, I might start again." Rusty smirked. "Good. You'll need him." The horizon shimmered. A deep rumble rolled through the ground, knocking dust off the rooftops. Every rig out in the desert began to move at once, pumping up and down, faster and faster, as if bowing to something rising from beneath. Cassidy whispered, "She's coming." Rusty chambered around. "Then let her." The first thing they saw was the light, thick and black at the same time, spilling from the direction of mine number 13. The wind carried a smell like gasoline and rot. Mother Marrow was awake. And Dry Wells was about to remember why it was dying. The rigs out beyond town were moving again. Not slowly, not with the tired groan of rust and wind, but violently, jerking up and down like something was pulling them from below. Each stroke pumped more of that black light into the air until the desert shimmered with a false dawn. Rusty watched from the courthouse steps, shotgun slung over his shoulder, the smell of burnt oil clinging to his clothes. Boone stood beside him, one-armed but unshaken. Cassidy paced near the barricades, his drone hovering overhead like a nervous guardian angel. "What happens when she gets here?" the kid asked. Rusty lit a cigarette, the flame trembling in the wind. "Then we stop being the hunters." The ground trembled. The old water tower collapsed somewhere behind the bar, spilling flame and sparks. Dry Wells screamed like metal bending under pressure. Boone's radio crackled with static, then a voice cut through, "They're inside, Main Street," followed by gunfire and the wet, slapping sound of something crawling fast. Rusty turned to Boone. "She's splitting the town." Boone nodded. "Then we split her back." They fell into motion without another word. Boone's men retreated toward the square, firing salt rounds down side streets. The air was thick with smoke, and every echo carried whispers, like children laughing underwater. Rusty's mechanical arm ached. The veins of steel under his skin pulsed red, almost hot enough to blister. The graft was reacting to the presence of its maker. Cassidy noticed. "Your arms, glowing." "She's calling it home," Rusty said grimly. "And it's listening." They reached the square. The last generator sputtered, powering the floodlights that cast long white beams across the street. The lights revealed motion, shapes dragging themselves out of the oil puddles. Half human, half child, faces warped as if melted by gasoline. Their mouths opened in unison, and the sound that came out wasn't screaming. It was singing. Cassidy fired first. The slug blew one apart, splattering black sludge against the brick wall. Another climbed over the hood of a pickup, eyes glowing headlight white. Boone dropped it with a clean shot. "Hold the line," Rusty shouted. But the line didn't hold. The things moved like water, flowing over obstacles, splitting and reforming. One lunged at Rusty. His mechanical arm snapped up, claws slicing through its chest. The creature shrieked, oil spraying across his jacket. Where it touched skin, it burned cold. Cassidy ducked behind a barrier, reloading. "We're losing ground." Rusty slammed the butt of his gun into another creature's skull. "Then we take it back." A flash of white exploded above them, Cassidy's drone self-detonating. The light blinded everything for a heartbeat. When the smoke cleared, a dozen of the creatures were gone, burned to slick ash. But Boone wasn't moving. Rusty ran to him. The sheriff was on his knees, clutching his chest. His shirt was torn open, revealing a gash that didn't bleed red, it oozed black. "Got me," Boone rasped. "Little bastard bit through." Rusty knelt. "You can still make it." Boone smiled faintly. "I lost a family once, Rusty. I'll be damned if I run from another." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small metal vial, the one with the dried blood of the chupacabra. "It smells her. Take it. She hates it more than she hates fire." Rusty hesitated, then took the vial. "You sure?" Boone's eyes were already fading. "Tell my boys I died sober." The sheriff's hand slipped from Rusty's wrist, falling limp. Rusty stood, oil and dust swirling around him. "You deserved better, old friend." Cassidy approached, face pale. "We have to move." "The well, look." Out past the rooftops, the horizon pulsed like a heartbeat. A column of black smoke twisted upward, spiraling with light from inside. The ground rumbled again, louder, closer. "She's breaking through," Rusty said. "If she surfaces here, it's over." Cassidy's voice shook. "Then we take the fight to her." Rusty looked at him, seeing something shift in the kid's eyes, fear turning into resolve. "You got guts, Vega. Dumb ones, but guts all the same." He turned to the remaining townsfolk, half a dozen at most. "Anyone still breathing, fall back to the ridge road. If we don't come back by dawn, torch the whole damn town." No one argued. They all knew there wasn't going to be a dawn. Rusty and Cassidy loaded the truck. The wind howled, carrying ashes like snow. Songbird's body lay inside the bar, the cords around her neck dimly glowing one last time. Rusty paused by her, placing a matchbook on her chest, Rusty's Roadhouse, open late. "Sorry I didn't buy you that drink," he whispered. Cassidy climbed into the passenger seat. "You sure you're up for this?" Rusty started the engine. The headlights cut through the haze, catching the faint shimmer of oil on the highway. "Kid, I've been up for this since '09. They drove toward mine number 13. The road wound through dead mesquite and rusted machinery. The deeper they went, the thicker the smell of crude became, sweet and metallic, like the breath of something alive. Cassidy stared out the window. "Why did you seal it back then?" "The mine." Rusty exhaled smoke through his nose. "Because we didn't have the guts to finish the job. Division 7 thought if we buried her deep enough, she'd starve. But Mother Marrow doesn't die. She waits." He tapped the vial Boone had given him against the dashboard. "And she remembers blood." The mine appeared at the end of the ravine, a black mouth gaping open, framed by collapsed scaffolding and the skeleton of an oil rig half sunk in mud. Flares from the town painted the sky behind them crimson. Cassidy gripped his gun. "This is where she took my sister." Rusty killed the headlights. The silence that followed felt heavier than darkness. "Then let's go get her." They stepped out, weapons ready. The air vibrated, low, like a heartbeat made of thunder. Oil dripped from the rocks, forming words on the ground that twisted as they read them. "Welcome back, Rusty." Cassidy shivered. "She knows your name." "She should," Rusty muttered. "I gave her mine." They entered the mine. The tunnel was slick with moisture that wasn't water. Every step echoed too long, like the sound bounced off invisible walls. Their flashlights barely pierced 10 feet ahead before the light bent, warped, and vanished into the black. Halfway down, they found the first body, one of Boone's men, fused into the wall like wax. His mouth was open in a silent scream, and oil leaked from his eyes. Cassidy gagged. Rusty pressed on. "Don't stop. Don't look." The further they descended, the louder the hum became. It wasn't sound anymore, it was vibration in the bones, inside the teeth. Rusty's arm reacted, veins of light racing up the metal, pulsing in rhythm with the hum. Then, faintly, over the noise, came a voice. "Cass, ID." The kid froze. "That's her. That's my sister." He ran ahead before Rusty could stop him, turning down a narrow shaft. The tunnel widened into a cavern lit by a dim red glow. In the center hung 12 shapes, children, suspended upside down, their bodies wrapped in translucent film that pulsed with black fluid. At the far end of the chamber stood a figure. Mother Marrow. 15 feet tall, body shifting between woman and oil rig skeleton. Her hair dripped crude, her face a mass of melted flesh, dozens of childlike faces forming and dissolving beneath the surface. Cassidy lifted his gun, shaking. "Let her go." The creature smiled, and every face smiled with her. "She's home now." Rusty stepped beside him, raising the vial. "You remember me, don't you?" The creature's head tilted. "The thief of my flesh." Rusty popped the cork. The smell hit the air like acid and lightning. Mother Marrow recoiled, hissing. Cassidy fired. The slug hit center mass, exploding into sparks. The creature staggered but didn't fall. Oil splattered the walls, forming clawed shadows that lunged back at them. Rusty shoved Cassidy aside. "Run!" The mine shook. Rocks fell from the ceiling. Rusty's arm flared bright red, its claws elongating like liquid steel. He drove them into the ground, carving a circle that began to glow. Cassidy shouted, "What are you doing?" "Buying you 10 seconds." He pulled the flare from his belt, struck it. The flame burned white hot. "Tell your sister I kept my promise." The flare hit the oil pool at Mother Marrow's feet. The world turned to fire. The explosion didn't sound like fire, it sounded like the world exhaling. Rusty hit the ground hard, air punched out of his lungs. Heat washed over him in a wave, the flare's ignition chain reacting with the skinwalker blood in his veins. For a heartbeat, he saw everything, the tunnels, the mine, the writhing network of oil veins pulsing like arteries, stretching deep beneath dry wells. Then the light collapsed. Darkness poured in. He coughed, dragging himself upright. His arm glowed faint red under layers of ash and soot. Metal tendons creaked. He couldn't hear anything except the low roar of flame devouring oxygen. "Cassidy," he shouted. His voice echoed down the tunnel, distorted by the heat. Cass. For a long moment there was nothing. Then, faintly, from deeper in the mine, "Here. I'm here." Rusty limped toward the sound, past walls dripping molten oil. The smell was unbearable, something between burnt plastic and rot. His flashlight flickered, then died, but the faint red glow from his prosthetic was enough to paint the world in blood tones. He found Cassidy half buried under debris, coughing black smoke. The kid's face was streaked with soot and tears, one arm pinned beneath a metal beam. Rusty heaved the beam aside with his mechanical arm. It screamed like an animal under the strain. "You alive?" Cassidy nodded weakly. "My ears are ringing, but yeah." The tunnel behind them had collapsed completely. The way out was gone. Rusty glanced forward. "Then we go deeper." Cassidy stared at him. "Deeper? Are you insane?" "Probably," Rusty said. "But she's still moving. We didn't kill her, we just made her mad." He pointed to the ground where veins of oil still pulsed beneath the rock, glowing faintly in rhythm. "She's bleeding, not dying." Cassidy groaned, pushing himself up. "So what's the plan?" Rusty's mouth twitched into something like a smile. "We find the heart." They walked in silence, guided by the slow, rhythmic hum echoing from the earth. Every now and then, Cassidy would hear whispers, faint, feminine, calling his name. At first, he thought it was the wind. Then he realized there was no wind down here. "Rusty," he whispered. "You hear that?" "Yeah," Rusty said without turning. "She's trying to make you doubt your ears. That's how she hunts." Cassidy swallowed. "Sounds like my sister." Rusty's tone went flat. "Then don't listen." But the voice persisted, soft and pleading. "Cass, please. It hurts." Cassidy's flashlight shook in his hand. "She's close. I swear that's her." He broke into a run, ignoring Rusty's shout. The tunnel narrowed, opening into a vast chamber that looked carved by something alive. Oil coated the walls in swirling patterns, each forming faces that turned and vanished when the light hit them. At the center was a cocoon, translucent, throbbing with light from within. Inside it floated a young woman. Cassidy's breath hitched. "Lila." He ran forward, pressing his hand to the membrane. "I'm here. I'm getting you out." The cocoon pulsed, then split down the center. A rush of hot air filled the chamber. Lila's eyes opened, blank and black. Rusty appeared in the doorway just as she stepped out. He saw it immediately, the wrongness. Her movements too smooth, too quiet. The oil veins in her skin pulsed with the same rhythm as the tunnels. "Cassidy," he warned, "that's not her." Cassidy turned, furious. "Don't you tell me." "Look at her eyes." The girl smiled. Oil dripped from the corners of her mouth. "Brother," she whispered. "Stay with me, forever." Her hands shot forward, grabbing Cassidy by the face. Rusty fired instinctively. The slug ripped through her chest, no blood, only black smoke and shrieking echoes. The figure convulsed, then collapsed into a puddle of tar that writhed like a living thing. Cassidy screamed, half in rage, half in grief. "You killed her." Rusty's voice was hoarse. "No. I saved what's left of her." Cassidy stumbled back, tears cutting tracks through the soot. The tar on the floor began crawling toward the wall, reforming into smaller shapes, hands, faces, eyes blinking open in the oil. She's rebuilding, Rusty said. We need to move, now. He grabbed Cassidy by the collar and dragged him deeper down the passage. The air changed again, hotter, heavier, and full of sound. The hum was now a voice, layered and massive, whispering in every direction at once. Words too ancient to understand. Rusty limped forward, each step slower. His prosthetic arm glowed like an ember, veins of molten red spreading into the shoulder. Cassidy noticed. It's burning you. Let it, Rusty grunted. It's the only thing keeping her out. They emerged into another chamber, vast, circular, and impossibly deep. In the center stood a colossal structure of bone and steel fused together, the old oil rig that had once sat above the mine, dragged down by something that wanted it close. From its base pulsed a massive heart, black, translucent, and beating with the rhythm of the earth. Every pulse sent ripples of oil crawling up the walls. Cassidy whispered, "That's her." Rusty nodded. The heart of the well. He reached into his coat and pulled out Boone's vial. The dried chupacabra blood shimmered faintly inside. "This is our fuse." Cassidy frowned. "You're gonna blow it up." "Burn it," Rusty said. "But it needs a carrier. Something that can survive long enough to reach the core." He turned to the kid. "That means me." Cassidy shook his head violently. "No way. You'll die." Rusty smiled, faint and tired. "Already did. 09, been running on borrowed oil ever since." Cassidy stepped closer. "There has to be another way." Rusty grabbed his shoulder, squeezing hard enough for the metal claws to bite. "Listen. You get topside, light the surface charge. When you see the flame, run like hell. Don't look back." Cassidy's throat tightened. "Rusty, save it." He pressed the vial into his own chest plate, where it hissed and fused with the skinwalker circuits. "Tell the world dry wells went out fighting." Then he turned toward the heart. The sound of Mother Marrow's voice filled the cavern, low and seductive. "You think you can kill me, Jack Harlan? You already belong to me." Rusty took one step forward. "Then I'm coming home." Cassidy's voice broke behind him. "Rusty." But the old soldier was already walking into the glow, his body half flesh, half fire. As he approached, the heart opened like a blooming wound. Tendrils of oil lashed out, wrapping around his arm, his chest, pulling him closer. Rusty screamed, but it wasn't pain. It was fury. He drove his metal claw straight into the core, releasing the vial's contents. The blood of Predator met the blood of the pit. The chamber erupted in light. Cassidy was thrown backward, tumbling through the tunnel, deafened by the sound of metal ripping apart and something vast screaming in rage. He crawled to his feet, vision fading, and looked back. Rusty was still standing, or something that used to be Rusty. Fire poured from his arm, spreading through the veins of oil like lightning through dark water. His silhouette burned in the inferno, holding the heart shut with both hands. For a moment, the world went white. Then, silence. The mine began to collapse. Cassidy ran. He burst out into the open air just as the ground behind him caved in, swallowing the road and half the desert. A pillar of flame shot up from the earth, black and gold, twisting into the sky. The rigs exploded one by one, sending shock waves across the horizon. Cassidy fell to his knees, gasping, face lit by the burning sky. The firestorm rose miles high, the sound of a god dying. In the distance, as the flames consumed the well, He swore he saw a figure standing inside the inferno, metal arm raised, still fighting. Then the light went out. Morning came without sunlight. The horizon over dry wells glowed a dull amber, choked by smoke and ash. The fire still burned somewhere deep underground, where the heart of the well used to be. Every few seconds, the ground trembled, the last breaths of something too big to die quietly. Cassidy Vega stood at the edge of the crater that used to be mine number 13. His clothes were soaked with oil and blood, his skin streaked black. Around him, the desert stretched silent and dead, no birds, no wind, just the endless hiss of burning earth. He stared into the pit. The fire below flickered red, blue, and then white, like the color couldn't decide what kind of hell it wanted to be. Somewhere beneath that light was Rusty Harlan. Cassidy whispered, "You did it, old man." He didn't expect an answer. He didn't get one. It took 3 days for the flames to die and 6 more before anyone dared to step foot near dry wells again. When the storm finally cleared, the crater was filled not with oil, but with water. Clear. Cold. Flowing up from deep beneath the shale. No one could explain it. Scientists from Austin tried. Drillers, preachers, even a couple of old Division 7 survivors came through. None stayed long. The town that had once bled black gold now bled clean water, and nobody trusted that kind of miracle. Cassidy stayed. He rebuilt the bar first. The sign out front flickered again, repaired from scraps and spare bulbs, Rusty's Roadhouse, open late. The jukebox still didn't work, but that didn't stop the silence from feeling different. It wasn't the silence of fear anymore. It was memory. He set up a photo behind the counter, Rusty in his younger years, Division 7 patch on his shoulder, cigarette in hand, grinning like the world was still worth saving. Next to it sat a glass case. Inside, resting on a black cloth, was a piece of twisted metal, Rusty's arm. The plating was melted, the joints fused, but inside the palm still glowed a single ember, faint, steady, like a heartbeat. Cassidy never told anyone it still moved sometimes. The town began to breathe again. Families returned, drawn by the miracle water that now bubbled from old drilling pipes. The well became a spring, the spring fed a river. The desert greened around it, cautiously, like it didn't quite believe what it was seeing. Sheriff Boone's name went up on a plaque in front of the courthouse. Songbird got a mural, her mouth open mid-note, her hair made of fire. Cassidy never called himself the hero. He just kept the lights on. Every night, just before closing, he'd pour 2 glasses of whiskey, one for him, one for the men whose photo sat behind the bar. He'd lift his glass to the iron arm, then drink in silence. Sometimes, when the wind picked up outside, the neon light would flicker, open pen open again, as if the town itself remembered. But peace doesn't last long in places that have seen too much blood. On the 93rd day after the fire, a truck pulled up to the bar. Black, government issue, windows tinted. Cassidy recognized the license plate code immediately, Division 7. 2 agents stepped out. No names, just badges that didn't reflect light right. "You Cassidy Vega?" one asked. Cassidy nodded. The men glanced at the metal arm in the case. "We'll need that." Cassidy frowned. "Not for sale." "It's not a request." Cassidy didn't move. "That arm belongs to Rusty Harlan." "You want it, you tell me why." The agent's eyes were like polished stone. "Because it's still transmitting." The room went quiet. Cassidy's stomach turned cold. "Transmitting what?" Something in the lower bands, the agent said. Signal strength fluctuates. Last spike was 20 minutes ago. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small receiver. The moment he flicked it on, the bar filled with static, then a faint rhythm beneath it. Thump. 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 Like a heartbeat. Cassidy stared at the arm. The ember inside the palm pulsed in time with the sound. Jesus, he whispered. The agent turned the device off. We'll be taking it to containment. Cassidy stood there for a long moment. Then he said quietly, if you take it, the town dies again. The agent frowned. What are you talking about? That light, Cassidy said, nodding at the ember. It's been burning since the day he went under. And the well's been clean ever since. You shut that down, you'll bring her back. The agents exchanged a look, the kind of look that meant they already had orders. Cassidy exhaled through his nose. Then I guess you'll have to kill me first. He reached under the counter, hand closing around the same shotgun Rusty had given him. The one etched with salt and marrow. The agents froze. The moment stretched, too long, too quiet, until a faint tremor rolled through the floorboards. Outside, the wind howled. And from far beneath the earth came a sound neither of them could mistake, a long, low groan, like something enormous turning in its sleep. The neon sign outside flickered. Open. Pen. Open. Cassidy smirked, never lowering the shotgun. Guess she remembers him too. That night, long after the agents left empty-handed, Cassidy sat alone in the bar. The lights were low, the jukebox humming static like a ghost trying to speak. He looked at the iron arm glowing in its glass case and whispered, "You still down there, aren't you?" The ember pulsed once, brighter. He smiled sadly. "Yeah. Thought so." He poured a drink, set it next to the case. The sound of the pour was soft, almost reverent. Outside, rain began to fall, real rain, heavy and cold. It rolled across the desert, hissing where it hit the still hot dirt. The first rainfall Dry Wells had seen in 15 years. Cassidy looked out the window, the reflection of the arm flickering in the glass beside his face. He whispered the same words he always did to new customers who wandered in, wide-eyed and lost. "Don't call this a bar," he said softly. "It's a barracks. And we're still recruiting." The camera would fade there, if there were a camera, but in the dark behind the bar, something shifted. The iron fingers twitched once, then stilled. The ember glowed steady, like a single eye watching from the grave. And somewhere far below Dry Wells, deep under the new water, the earth gave one final, almost human, sigh.